te makawariki, te puhiariki, tēnā koutou. Tainui waka, tainui tangata, me o karanga ki te iwi, motu whānui, ki te haramei nei i rungi i tūranga waiwai mo tēnei kaupapa o te kotahitanga, tēnā koutou. Kia tātai nau Māori, he peka mai nei i raro i te karanga o te kotahitanga. Kua whakatīnana hia mai nai Māori tēnā whakaro i tēnei rangi. Kua tū tātou i roto i te kotahitanga. Nō reira, kua uia mai te etahi ki au, ko wei tēnei, he kōrero atu kia koutou. Ko te whakautu, ko te kuti, ko te haua, ko te wera, kua panui. Tēnā tātou. Me tīmata au taku kōrero ki konei. An illiterate white supremacist is a nuisance and a hoha. But an illiterate white supremacist in power is dangerous. Absolutely dangerous to us Nai Māori. And we have seen that as recently as last evening when the leaked document that has spread throughout Māoridom and social media was received that absolutely strips the tapu and the mana out of the treaty arrangement that we have with the Crown. We have seen the dangers of white supremacy from that house in Wellington since it was instituted on the backs of Te Tiriti o Waitangi in 1840. It is a house of white supremacy because it is predicated on the doctrine of discovery, which is absolutely racist and looks to divide the world between conquering colonial powers. Hei aha mana iwi take take. They have imported those whakaros here and planted them in our land. But we have told them time and time again, justice cannot grow on stolen land. Whakamutu atu e nā whakaro. Māoridom and our iwi motuhake were not put on this earth to be subjugated to somebody else's power. Least of all, the Crown in Wellington, who are here at our invitation, to be clear. They have not conquered us. Our mana and our tapu remains intact. And if anything, this white supremacist underpinned government has shown us that we will galvanize around ourselves and our mokopuna and remind ourselves that Wellington is not our salvation. It never has been and it never will be. Our salvation lies in our truth. Moana Jackson said that colonization is ultimately violence to the soul. It is the impact and the violence of 184 years that we have withstood and will continue to withstand. It is the violence upon our mana and our tapu. The Crown in Wellington would have you believe that colonization can be reduced to a series of unfortunate transactions. That is part of the mythology that they carry with them when they try to supplant our kōrero with kōrero that comes out of Westminster in England and promotes them to the top of the ladder and puts the mana and tapu of our mokopuna down underneath them. Kia taureka reka rātou I a tātou I runga I tēnei whenua. Part of the colonial method is to control the frame and define the terms of the dialogue. And this government and its predecessors have been clever in doing that. they continue to do that to us. So let's address some of those misconceptions that they have promoted and they have based their power on. Number one, the cession myth. There was no cession. There was no cession of sovereignty in Waitangi on the 6th of February 1840. That is an expert finding of fact from the Crown's own tribunal. That is consistent with our tikanga, because none of us have more teatea, haka, poi, or matatini brackets written for the day we ceded sovereignty to a foreign power. E hara, they can't be found because it didn't happen. The Crown are selling the cession myth, but we are not buying it. Their own expert tribunal in stage 1 of Te Paparahi o Te Raki in the far north examined every historical document and account going into that signing and came to the expert finding of fact that sovereignty was not ceded. The Crown in Wellington say they're not happy with that report. I wonder why. It undermines their legitimacy, and it undermines the fictions they've been selling us and our tipuna for years. Colonial myth number 2 that we should get rid of before we go into these workshops is that this country has no written constitution. Te Tiriti o Waitangi is our constitution. Whakanuia. Constitutions ultimately are about how power is shared. And Te Tiriti o Waitangi was brilliantly clear about that. It goes into another myth, but it's a method that the colonial powers use, which is to complicate things so much that people become confused about them. It's why I describe them as illiterate, because they are treaty illiterate. They tell us the treaty is too complicated, it's unclear, and so we must come up with a series of principles every 20 years to water it down. The treaty is not unclear. Full, exclusive and undisturbed possession of their lands, forests, fisheries, kāinga and all other taonga for as long as they shall wish to retain them. Kua whiti mai te maramatanga, that's brilliantly clear to me. Brilliantly clear. But the Crown want to say we are seeking clarity, so we will promote a bill in the House that redefines the principles to serve our colonial agenda. And they're selling that to us on the basis that they're not clear, and neither are we. Māoridom is clear. We have been clear since 1840, and every waiata sung off the Aotearoa this morning has reaffirmed our mana motuhake. We know, but putting those things into action is part of what is complicated when a colonizer is gaslighting you. And they are telling you those things you know to be true are no longer true. If Te Tiriti o Waitangi is the constitution of this country, we must insist that it is not just honoured, but that it is implemented. It guarantees unto us, and was cleverly done by our tipuna, guarantees unto us the protection for our tino rangatiratanga. And to be clear, this is not just a scrap about who's got the biggest mana. They are now affecting the tapu of our children. They have relegated us to an oppressed underclass on our own land. But if Te Tiriti o Waitangi is the constitution of this country, then mana motuhake is our birthright. Mana motuhake absolutely is our birthright. And we must push back and unify together around that whakaaro. Ko tahitanga is not just something we sing about at Matatini. Ko tahitanga needs to be put into practice. And we need to work out courageously as a country how to reconfigure power to honour the original treaty agreement. In doing that, we must speak not just our truth to power, which we and others have been doing for generations now. We have gone to Wellington and we have walked these streets in this whenua to speak truth to power. We must now have the courage to speak power into our truth. We must educate our children. We are sending our children to the colonizer to be educated on a daily basis, and are surprised when the most contested piece of raupatu is the pātū wata of our mokapuna's minds. The raupatu of our hinenaro is what the colonizer depends on to continue this fiction. We must rise up from that and reclaim the power inside our truth. And if you're looking for it, it's carved on every whare in our country. It's in our songs. Our composers, our wānanga toi have held our narrative. We must reinvest in that. We must reinvest in our truth. And the people that carry it into the hearts and minds of our mokapuna. We lament and say this system is broken. How can we fix it? But indeed this system, if you're talking about what's coming out of Wellington, is not broken at all. It's working exactly how they need it to work. It is by design that in 2024 we are sitting here. We need to make sure that our mokapuna are not sitting here in 20 years' time. And we have emancipated ourselves from not only the mental slavery that Wellington is compelling us to believe in, but the economic, the cultural, and the spiritual slavery that they have ensured carries their fictions upon this land. E te iwi, when we go into these workshops and discuss amongst ourselves our kotahitanga, he pakuhi no I tēnei kia tātou. Please, can we take our sovereign selves into those discussions? Can we take our unsurrendered selves into those discussions? Can we please not let the messages that come off the King's marae be spoken in the language of surrender? Can we please uplift our mokapuna and say, even when it got hard and even when it got gritty, in our kotahitanga we found the strength to protect your tapu and to protect your mana. Nō reira e tiwi, kia kaha mai tātou. This government is committed to gaslighting us. By tomorrow I'll be a hater and a wrecker, as we have been everywhere throughout history when we have stood up for our rights. They have called the people that have stood for our truth radicals. They have locked the gates to us. We are here to liberate ourselves. Nō reira, mea mihi atu kia tātou e tiwi. Tēnā tātou, Māori ora kia tātou.